Hi, everybody. I'm Rita Hickman with Inspire Massage, your local body-mind expert. And I'm here with Irma Francis, who is a spiritual life coach. And we are talking about Are You a Healer? And it's part of our series. And the topic tonight is authenticity. So we're going to be here for about 45 minutes. It's a really great topic, and we are experts in it on how to be a healer and how to be as authentic as possible. So what I'd invite you to do is take a breath, find a spot, maybe get a cup of tea, get comfortable, close the door if you have to, because here's the beautiful thing. Whenever you get new information, it goes when you're relaxed, it goes into your subconscious and it starts to make changes right away. So really, if you want to go in the direction that you desire, all you have to do is relax and show up. Because whenever you get new epiphanies, whenever you get new insights and understanding, it automatically changes your brain and it changes your outlook. And that changes your nervous system and it changes how we interact with the world. So if you want to learn something new, if you want to get good at something, you watch and listen to a master. And Irma and I combined have been doing this for a lot of years, and we're really good at what we do. So if you relax, chill out, keep an open mind, and just breathe it in, you will automatically change. Really, all you have to do is show up. You are one epiphany away from enlightenment. And that is what we're here to help you on your path. So if you're ready, remember you can ask us questions, but we won't answer them until the end. And if we do run out of time, we'll answer them in our next video, our next live stream, as well as the email that I send out tomorrow. So if you'd like to be on our email list, go to inspiremassage.com and sign up for it. I send out emails to keep our group on task, on track, so that we can heal the world and make a really big difference. Because it's only by working together as a community of healers that we can make any big positive change. And I'm here and Irma's here to help you on it. So we're going to dive into the topic, Are You a Healer? Authenticity. And I'm so glad that you're here to join us. So Irma, would you like to start tonight?
Oh, sure.
Great.
Authenticity. Gosh, this has been such an important part of my life and my spiritual path and just my evolving on my journey through life. A lot of times I look at a topic and a word like authenticity, and I say, well, what's the opposite of authenticity? And it would be many words, but one that pops into my mind is artificial. The opposite of being authentic is to pretend. But to really get down to the core of what authenticity is, it's to be your true self. And to me, the true self is the soul or the higher self. It's the essence of who we are as a person. And a lot of times we lose contact with that true self, with that essence, with that soul. And because we're born into a psychological existence, being a spiritual being born into a psychological existence, we can forget that spiritual part of us. And that spiritual part of us is the essence of us, our soul, which is pure and authentic and our true self. And as we go through our lives, we're conditioned by the psychological existence that we're born into, and we lose contact with that true self. And to me, the spiritual journey is the journey of remembering and reconnecting to that true self, which I would call the authentic self. So that's what I connect to being authentic. What about you,
So,
Rita?
well, I mean, the question that came up for me is, do you believe, so you're saying authenticity is remembering who your true self is.
Mm-hmm.
So it reminds me of a book. There's a woman that would channel a gentleman named Seth,
Yeah.
and from the 1960s. And I used to love Seth. and I read quite a few of their books. And Seth believed that we had many lives. And so we continue lifetime and lifetime again to find our authentic self, to remember who we truly are. And then it takes multiple lifetimes in order to get back to that core, that we need more than one set of eyes or set of experiences, that we need to have multiple viewpoints. We need to have multiple ways of looking at it. Now, the interesting thing is I looked at it as maybe we don't need to have multiple lives. Maybe we can have multiple versions of ourselves. Maybe for me, as I go through life, I notice that I'm different people at different times. And that's been tricky for authenticity for me, because depending upon my state of mind, depending upon what childhood issue I got stuck in, I will have different personalities, and they're all authentic. But to the person that is with me, it can seem like I change my point of view, or who I am changes. Has that happened to anybody else, where people look at you and they almost think that you're like Sybil? I've been accused of that for sure, but they're always authentic. And so Seth talks about how you go through multiple lives and lifetimes in order to get those different points of view, to be victim and victimizer, predator and prey, hero and person who's been defeated, or coward. You know, that we need to have those multiple points of view in order to really find that deeper, authentic part of who we are, which is much bigger than the identity that we're given or that we're imprinted upon, or the patterns that are passed down from our family. So, I mean, I've noticed that as I've gone through life, I've been multiple people, and they've all been my authentic feeling and my authentic true self. They've just been different points of view. They've been different ideas. And so I can, in one moment, say, oh, I totally believe that XYZ is right. You know, that turtles should be sentient beings that vote. You know, and then the next moment I'll be like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. That's the dumbest idea I've ever thought of. So I think we can either have multiple lifetimes if we're going to look at metaphysics, you know, or we live multiple lives in the same lifetime. I certainly know that I have, especially the last few years. I've lived multiple people and lives, and those coming together, all those different aspects and viewpoints, is what's making me whole. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I'm becoming, from my point of view, I'm becoming my authentic self. It's not necessarily, it's uncovering it, but it's also becoming and reclaiming parts of my soul by having these experiences and being these different points of view, and being caught in the middle of seeing both sides. Does that make sense?
That's interesting, because, and I would be really curious what our audience thinks, and I would love to get some feedback.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because and I shared, I think, in one of our other videos about my experience at a young age, and I woke up to what I would call my soul. So I had this soul awareness. So I've always had like this reference point of knowing that was the my true self, and the personality that kind of developed to be able to function in the world. I realized that that's for functioning in the world. So I have such a clear connection to my soul, which that feels totally authentic and real. So my experience may be a little different because of that. So
Sure.
I'm curious what other people think about that idea
Sure.
of being authentic, and that having a soul connection or an essence connection, and what other people's experiences have been.
Yeah, the difference between whether we are uncovering and finding our soul, or whether we are reclaiming our soul and developing it and moving towards something. So, yeah, we love your opinions. And if you believe if there are multiple lives, if you believe that there are multiple lives within the same life, that would be cool too. So, what troubles have you had in uncovering your authenticity? Have you had any struggles? I mean, have things gotten in the way, blocks or people or experiences that you had to clean up or wash away in order to reconnect with your authenticity? Because we all have things that get in the way.
Yeah, I don't think for me it was an uncovering my authenticity and issues kind of arising out of that. I would say for me, it was more holding on to and keeping the integrity and the connection to what I knew to be true. So, the world is set up in a way that if you don't know who you truly are, you can kind of be pushed and pulled in lots of different directions. So, the issues for me came more from somebody or something from the external world trying to push, pull, change, and me being pretty solid in no, can't, no can do.
So repelling people, not repelling them, but trying to stand in your own authenticity and truth, which you knew it was. And for me, I had no idea who I was. I had no clue. And because of that, for me, it was a reclaiming.
Yeah.
Or actually a moving towards authenticity.
Sure.
Instead of holding out against people trying to keep me from being authentic, it was, who am I? Who am I becoming? Who do I want to be? And finding out what authenticity meant for me. So what does authenticity mean to you guys out there? Do you have any opinions? Any thoughts? So, when people have been pushing against you, and trying to get you out of your space of authenticity, what have you done to stay strong?
To stay strong. Well, a lot of times my approach has been not so much of resisting and of repelling, but an allowing of I see you, I hear you, and if you're going to push and pull and do whatever it is you're doing, you're kind of in that fight alone. So I don't very often engage in that kind of power struggle, because if I did, that would be one way that I would lose my true self, is to engage ego to ego.
Okay, so you take the judgment out of it.
Yeah.
You have no judgment. I mean, and I do the same. That's one of my tricks too. When I take all judgment out of the situation, then I'm allowed to be like that willow, in Buddhist philosophy. Whereas I'm not judging you. I'm allowing you to be who you are. And because of that, it doesn't change me in any way, because I know who I am, and I accept who you are. So nothing will really affect you. Except, as you get closer to people, as they're in your more inner circles, I know I start to doubt and I start to question, because their opinions matter to me. And part of my authenticity is based on how the people around me sometimes that I care about, that I value their opinion, are responding to me. And so I question, is this really authentic for me? I have a number of people in my life who call me on things, because how I grew up, I had the tendency to hide and to not express what I was thinking and feeling. And so what people saw was not what I was thinking, because what was going on inside was so violent, was so dramatic, that the people around me couldn't handle it. And so I had to hide that from most people. And so I was authentic, but to myself, I knew who I was, but I wasn't going to show that to anyone else, because they weren't prepared for that. They weren't ready for my authenticity. I always think of the movie where he says, "You can't handle the truth," with Tom Cruise. And I think of that. And as laughable as that it may be, that's exactly how I felt for a really long time, is that people couldn't handle the truth of my authenticity. They couldn't handle what I was feeling. And, that happened with the Catholic Church a lot, too. It's one of the reasons I didn't buy into Catholicism, is because what I was going through internally and in my family and in my life, when I was young, was so far removed from what the church or anyone else was espousing. And so because of that, I couldn't feel like I could express that authenticity. I couldn't express what was really going on in my head, or really going on in my thoughts or my body, because I knew everybody around me would freak out. Mm-hmm. And so authenticity came really hard for me, because it had to come with a level of trust. Mm. I couldn't trust people around me, which meant that I couldn't be authentic with them. So that's a shift. That's part of where my authenticity has come from. It's like, I know who I am, I know what I'm feeling, but you aren't ready for this, and so you don't get this. Even the people who were closest to me, because what was going on was so dramatic. Mm-hmm. Now, have you ever had experiences like that where you had to cover up your authenticity with people?
I would say at a younger age, I just didn't know any better. And there was that part of me that was so clear that if somebody was being accusing or critical or whatever, I would just say, no, that's not true. No, that's not the truth of me. And so I would kind of just firmly say, even at a young age, I don't really know what you're seeing or what you're saying or why, but that's not true for me.
Can't you almost picture Irma as a little girl just standing there saying, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not what I believe. You must be, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Wow, you were really brazen. I mean, how wonderful is that? But you didn't know any better.
No, I didn't know I was being brazen. I just was like, I just knew it wasn't true.
You were just baffled about what people were trying to do.
Well, yes, because in my soul world, it's about love, truth, peace, harmony.
Mm-hmm. A true hippie.
Yeah.
You're a true hippie chick.
Even as a little girl. And so, I didn't understand why
people were being so crazy.
Well, critical, or trying to hold anybody back or repress anybody, or not wanting another person to be their fullest, best, truest self. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some of the more memorable times when you looked at something and just quizzically and said, "What are you doing?" Do you remember anything that was like that?
Oh, gosh. Do you?
Oh, where I said, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
I did that actually quite recently. I did that. I was at breakfast with my family. I try to go every Sunday. And I was at breakfast with my family, and my sister was trying to express something. And my dad caught on some topic about how she wanted to have my husband come and shoot his bow and arrow at a public event. And my dad thought that was the most dangerous, crazy thing that would lose her job. And he just wasn't listening. And so I felt it necessary to start to get louder and louder. We're in this tiny little restaurant. And I'm sitting there thinking, how can you be so delusional that you're getting in a fight with me in a tiny little restaurant where there's like 20 seats? Everybody can hear everything that you say. And it really, it surprised me that people could be so disconnected from their external reality that they'd make a spectacle in order to prove a point, in order to get a point across. And that really surprised me, that people would feel that strongly about something that they had to have this big emotional reaction in public, because that's just not how I was taught. I was taught to maintain my feelings, to always have a good image, to be inauthentic. I was taught to be inauthentic because to be authentic meant that you would be ostracized. And that people would find out all your secrets, and if they found out all of your secrets, that they would use them against you. So authenticity isn't something that was safe to have. And especially when I had all that dramatic stuff going on when I was a kid, it wasn't safe to be authentic, because there was usually a very strong negative consequence. One of the beautiful things that I'm learning, though, as an adult, is that's what I thought was true, but that's not what really is true. You learned at an early age that if you are authentic, that people like it. People listen to it. People respect you for it.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was taught not to do that, because people would disrespect you and they would use you. But what I'm discovering as I've gotten older is the more authentic I am, the better people treat me. It's really, it's quite a miracle for me, coming from the disruptive background that I came from. It's one of those wonderful epiphanies that I had about authenticity. The more authentic I am, and the more I tell people how I feel, and the more I express it, even if it seems a little melodramatic to me or a little bit loud, especially with men in my life, or the male population, the bigger impact it has. And that really surprised me, because I went through life thinking that I was a victim, that I couldn't be authentic. And I'm learning that life is actually, you get treated much better when you are authentic.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, because my outlook has been, this is my space, and I'm in it. What can anybody do about that?
Sure.
I mean, it's
Sure.
really unmovable, unchangeable, unshakable. So, yeah.
Have you used any other tools to keep people off your back, let's say, when they've wanted to impose their opinion and keep you quiet and keep you down and keep you a nice woman that doesn't have a voice and doesn't express herself?
Yeah, I think a good tool is if somebody is being critical or whatever it is, and it doesn't feel good to me, I'll just say, well, wow, I'm really curious why you think ... And and honestly, I'm being authentic when I'm asking that question. I'm curious, so you think that I'm ... Wow, I'm curious. Tell me more about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what have people told you when you've said that? Tell me more why you are, sexist. Please, I'm fascinated by your point of view. Share that with me.
Well, and that could
and
happen.
What have they told you?
I think a lot of times at first they get a little thrown off guard, but then they start to open up and share, and before we know it, we're kind of friendly. It worked, and honestly, I couldn't do that if I really wasn't curious, but I am, and so that's a tool that works.
So it
quite
opens
well.
up the door to conversation. So you get the judgment out of the way. There's no judgment. You are an interesting person, and I'm interested in hearing your story, and I'm curious about what you have to say. But have you ever had a time though where it pricks you, it pokes you, and you have an emotional reaction to it?
I'm sure there has been. It's whatever those times have been. It's because I took it personally. I took it into myself and made it personal. And anytime I've done that, there's an emotional reaction. But especially as I've matured, I've gotten pretty good at not taking it in and realizing if somebody's doing something harmful, hurtful, critical, or whatever, it's about them and not about me. But certainly I can't right at the moment think of something, but there's been plenty. And it's been when I've taken it personally and taken it into myself.
Do you think any of your reactions have been based on generations that came before you? Because I know a lot of difficulties and a lot of reactions that we have aren't necessarily ours. They come from our family traditions. You know, so if something happened to our mother or grandmother or grandfather, many times they then develop attitudes and reactions that they get imprinted down the line. You know, in many indigenous cultures, it's 7 generations. Whatever you do now, it's 7 generations down the line is how long the impact is going to be. So many times when we have a reaction to something that gets away from, you know, what Irma would say was her authentic self, that core of peace and beauty and enlightenment, when we get away from that, it's not necessarily ours. And for me, that's made it very confusing at times. And it makes it confusing for a lot of my clients, is they come to me and they say, I'm having this reaction and I don't know why. And the question we ask is this ancestral? Is this coming from your mother or your grandmother or your great-grandmother where something happened to them and then they developed a tradition or a habit that got imprinted on you? And now you don't know why you react to this situation. You have no idea why tall, brown-haired men make you mad immediately, you know, as soon as you look at them. You have no idea because you look back on your life and there was nothing that you can pinpoint it to. That's the question I then ask. Is this something that comes from generations before? And a lot of stuff does, actually. A lot of the reactions that we have to people that keep us from being our authentic self, we're cleaning up the stories and the pain and the trauma of previous generations of ours. You know, so one of the reasons that I push being authentic, at least to yourself, and reclaiming your souls, is because you aren't only healing yourself. You're healing 7 generations back, you know, all of the women and the men in your family that came before you, and you're also healing the 7 generations to come and all of the people that you impact. You're being a role model, as well as you're teaching new traditions and new ways to interact with the world. So many times when people feel inauthentic and they don't know why, there's no reason that they should be reacting to someone who has a raised voice. There's no reason they should be overreacting or feeling melodramatic to someone who's being aggressive or confrontational. You know, there's no reason, because they haven't lived in Rwanda. You know, they haven't had big things which have traumatized them. Many times it can come from past experiences when trauma was a lot more common. We live in a day and age where we have virtually everything in this country. And trauma was a lot more common when there was fewer resources, you know, and people had to really scrape for survival. They were in survival mode for a big part of their lives. And when you're in that sort of environment, trauma happens a lot easier. And then now we're dealing with the consequences of the undealt trauma that came from our family. And that's one of my biggest blocks to authenticity, is when I have these reactions to something that I don't know where they come from. There's nothing logical or rational about them. And how do I deal with it? The best way that I deal with it is I simply accept it. I realize it's not mine. This reaction doesn't have anything to do with me, and I come at it like you do, with a curiosity. You know, I'm curious as to why I'm reacting this way or why I'm having this response, rather than diving headlong into the response and expressing it. You know, I take that breath and that step and say, wow, like you do to someone else, I'm curious why you would think that. When I'm reacting, one of my first knee-jerk reactions is, wow, I'm curious why I'm responding that way. Why am I feeling this? There's no reason I should. I'm an adult. This is a different situation. Why am I responding in such a reactionary way? Away from who I prefer to be, you know, that authentic soul self. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I thought that. Thank you for sharing
Oh, you
that,
bet.
because those were all really good, valid points, and what you were talking about is like a pathology that's carried on from generation to generation, and if we aren't aware of it, yeah, we can just act it out for sure. Yeah. There was something. I know what I was thinking. As far as authenticity, and um, a lot of times in our Western society, and that's the only society I've lived in, so that's all I can talk about. We have this idea that fitting in is success.
Okay.
From my perspective, and being that soul observer, I can kind of see that the purpose and the benefit to a point of fitting in, but then if we're fitting into what I would call the status quo, we might want to take a look at that and say, is that what's true for me? Or am I kind of just going along to get along? Because there's a real pull in our Western society. I mean, given how much television is watched and how much, we're trying to imitate some TV show or some actress or whatever. And just overall how we're bombarded with this idea of what we are supposed to be versus what we truly are. So I just wanted to make that point about the fitting into the status quo.
I think it's very difficult for most of us because there's so much pressure to be like everybody else. And that's how you find success, and that's how you find joy. If you just follow this path and these 7 or 10 steps. I mean, how many of us have followed the path that someone else has said, this is what you need to do and this is how you do it? And we've gotten to the end, and we certainly haven't achieved what they've achieved. Somebody said something interesting about gurus in the field. And what they said is gurus are speaking from their own story, from their own authenticity, and then teaching it to other people. And the problem is the other people don't have the same personality characteristics as the guru did. Maybe the guru had a family history, which then drove them to achieve certain things or be curious about certain things. And I'm not. And so if I follow someone else's path, which is authentic to them, I'm certainly not going to end up in the same place. Not at all. I'm following a marketing guru named Russell Brunson, and he does something with sales funnels. And he's great at them because he loves the process. He loves sales. He loves understanding how sales works. And so he has spent, thousands of hours geeking out about it. And I can follow his method, and I can follow what he does and the tool that he created, but because I'm not passionate about it, I'm not excited about it, it's not my authentic self, I certainly don't get the same results. But we have got so much pressure from all around us, everybody almost calling us stupid. Everyone's walking around calling everybody else stupid and saying, you don't know what you want. You don't know who you are. You don't know how you feel. Let me tell you what you want. Let me tell you how to feel. Let me tell you who to be. And when your environment is constantly telling you something like that, you're bound to question yourself. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Irma because in the midst of all of that, she was able to say, no, I know exactly who I am. I spent a lifetime of questioning myself, and I'm sure everybody out there has too. And feel free to share your stories as well of how, you get bombarded by so much that you don't know who your authentic self is anymore. You don't know what's true. You don't know what's real. And so you follow whoever gives you a path because they've got status and they've got money and they've, and their hair looks good. And maybe they've figured it out. I don't know. And so we question ourselves constantly. It was interesting. I was talking to a woman, Deb, who is doing my web design. And when I was talking to Deb, she said she'd go to all these seminars and conferences on coaching. And she said most of the people that were up there selling whatever they were selling, they hadn't achieved what they were saying they had achieved. The multi-millions and the high status and the cars and the houses, they were still living in their sister's garage. But they were selling a lifestyle and an image that wasn't authentic to them. When you get enough people that are pressuring you like that, it's really hard to not question yourself. And so authenticity for me isn't always a question of knowing who I am and expressing it. It's a question of who am I? And I don't know what to express because I don't know who I am. And the older I get and the more experiences I have, I get a better handle on it. And so I become more authentic the older I get because I have a better handle on who I am and what I believe and what I want in a way that I never had when I was younger because I just didn't know. I just didn't have the life experience and have proved it out.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. I'm kind of just taking in everything you just said, and trying to relate to that. Not knowing oneself and how does one get to know oneself, and there is, I think, some very key things that lead to that, and it's not always easy for sure. And that's being transparent. It's being vulnerable. It's being, no matter what's going on around you or who's around you, having a willingness to be transparent and to be vulnerable. And of course, you wouldn't do that around people that aren't safe. And really, and if you're feeling that somebody's not safe, trusting that, knowing when to be vulnerable and transparent, and finding people and bringing them into your inner circle that feel safe enough to you to be transparent and to be vulnerable. Because without transparency and without being vulnerability, it would be very hard to make contact with our
Sure.
true self. And to do that, we need safe people. So,
Right. And safe people are kind of hard to find.
yeah.
You have to vet them out and work with them a while before you recognize whether they're safe or not. I can tell you for sure, when you find people who you can be safe with, that's when you connect most with your authentic self, because you don't have to be afraid or you may be afraid, but you walk out there anyways and you give of yourself. But it's really hard because we're surrounded in a world of people who don't have good social skills, who don't have good relationship skills. I mean, I know when I've had to share stories of my past with people that needed to know. They needed to know, this happened to me and that happened to me. They needed to know the difficult things. I was prepared that they would respond badly. I was prepared that they would say the wrong thing. And I was prepared for it, which was good because they did. It's like when someone's going through cancer or grieving or something similar than that, people like to give you platitudes in order to get out of the situation and to feel better. They don't want you to authentically feel. They want you to cut it off, not impose on them, and try to get out of the situation as fast as possible. And that's normal human nature, is to not want other people to be authentic. Because of our empathic nature, especially as healers, it can be difficult to feel other people's authenticity. But if we stay strong with it and resilient and have some detachment and without judgment, then we can be there with people's authenticity. As Irma has shown and said, when you're able to be with someone, then it shifts the energy. When you don't try to make them become somebody that they're not, they feel loved, respected, valued, and heard. And that is one of the best healing things that you can do for somebody, because in this culture that we have where it's very polarized and very adversarial and very superficial, living in a world like that, we have to, one, be careful about the people that we share our authenticity with, and two, really look at each other with a little bit of objectivity and a little bit of distance, because the world needs us to hear them. People are desperate for us to hear what they're feeling and thinking, to see them as people. And that's been the biggest lesson lately for me in my life of, if I take the time and really see and listen to the people that are in my life, then they're able to get through their pain or their anger or their frustration much quicker, When I resist them, when I tell them that they're wrong, when I tell them that I disagree or I'm hurt or why could they say that, I'm being authentic. You get to be authentic, so I should get to be authentic too. And you have the right to be, but it's not always in your best interest to be to be authentic right away. Sometimes everything goes much smoother if you allow someone else, because as I said, there's this desperation of people wanting to communicate with one another, wanting to feel heard and seen. And it's to such a fever pitch in our culture anymore that that we as healers need to rise above it, need to be the ones that start the movement. Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, nonviolent communication, for sure. Marshall Rosenberg, a great resource for that.
Definitely.
And it's something that we need to be the role models for. And so we tap into our authentic self of that security and that core of us, so that we can help role model and teach other people that it's okay for them to be authentic, and also how to communicate in a way that they can be heard.
Yeah. Something I thought of when you were saying that, Rita, is, and this is such a very simple thing. If we all carried around this seed of this idea that different doesn't mean wrong, different just means different. So, I mean, that would end like so many conflicts in the world. Yeah. Different doesn't mean wrong. It's just different. And isn't that a glorious, wonderful thing that we are different? We have our differences. What a variety. What a full, glorious world of curiosity.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
people get confused when you do that, though. Not when you do that, but when people get confused when you say, I'm right and you're right.
Yeah.
They get very confused, and actually I've found that they get adversarial with me when I say, no, you're right. And I'm right. We're both right. It can stir things up because they want a right or a wrong. They want an argument because it moves energy and it makes them feel better because they've got all this angst that they want to be heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, people have definitely been confused when I've said we're both right. No, that's not possible. Somebody's right and somebody's wrong. No, it's possible we're both right. Let's work on figuring out how that can be true. So when I started myself by saying, how can it be true that you're right and I'm right? Even before I say anything else. If I say to myself, how can you be right and I be right at the same time? Then I'm able to dial down any emotional reaction that I have, not come back strong, swinging, which is what I'd like to do. And I can do what you work on, which is an honest, sincere curiosity of who are you, where are you coming from, how did you develop this belief, and I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
When I approach somebody with the sincere, I want to hear your story, who you are today, it opens up all sorts of doors. And we as healers are very good at that.
Yeah. Something I thought of too, we're talking about different tools. I know I have something about me, and I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. Other people may have problems at times, but hey, I am what I am, and
there you go.
They are who they are.
And you're authentic.
But one of the things is, and I'm sure it's going to show up in this video, I take my time and think. And if somebody asks me a question, I kind of filter it down and find that heart connection and that soul connection. And when I get that, then I bring it back up and I respond. So I'm not always moving fast and quick throughout my life. And there are people in my life that sometimes have a problem with that, and they want quick answers or whatever. And a tool for me, whether it's people I know or just going about my life, I'll say, I'm sorry, I move slow, or if it's in a intimate or a close interaction, I'll say, I need a little bit of time to feel. I'm feeling in this moment, and I don't have any thoughts or any words to give you right now. I'm in a feeling place, and that really kind of at times. Well, yeah, it's like, well, how long? How long are you going to take to feel? I mean,
Sure.
let's go,
Sure.
let's talk, let's
Sure.
think. And I'm like, well, I don't know.
Right.
And it can drive people crazy.
Right.
But that's being true to myself, and my intention is never to make anybody uncomfortable in any way, but also my intention is not to make myself uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I had a friend who had a script, and I think scripts are great. If you've got scripts in your life, then you know how to handle certain situations. I needed a script when I first started to order pizza because I didn't like talking to people, and ordering pizza was confusing and difficult, and I needed a script. And I needed a script for how to talk to telemarketers, and I needed a script for how to, ask questions at a grocery store. I had to have scripts in my head. And so I had a friend, and his script was, if you need to know now, the answer is no.
Wow.
And
I'm going to use that
yes,
one. That's a good one.
It's a wonderful one. So
Yeah.
he would say, if you need to know now, the answer is no. And that would shut people up pretty quick. And he'd use it with telemarketers, and he'd use it with people who were close to him as well as strangers. And that way he didn't have to give an explanation. He didn't have to justify. He didn't have to defend. He just very clearly drew the line. If you need an answer right now, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Period. End of discussion. And that was a very powerful line to draw. And so a lot of people would respect that. And that's one way in order to stay authentic, even when people are pushing on you to be something different. You can always buy yourself some time. I had a therapist who said to me, she said, you can always go to the bathroom. No matter what. Sometimes during a meeting, I was going to the bathroom 3 or 4 times, like every 10 minutes. I have a bladder problems. Really, I'm sorry. Sorry, I have to go to the bathroom again. But really, it was just a way to tap back into my authentic self. And I'll do it when I'm working with a client sometimes too. If something becomes overwhelming, or I hear myself reacting in my head and I don't want to react, I'm coming from a place that might be, as I said, my ancestral history, the patterns of my family that were imprinted on me, or trauma in my own life. I say, pardon me, I need to go to the washroom. I'll be right back. It gives me an opportunity to dial it back down, level out, and tap back into that curious, non-judgmental objectivity, which is who my authentic self truly is. And all of us truly are when we're not distracted by our ego and our judgments and our pain and our issues. Now, we're just about out of time. So do we have any other questions or thoughts or ideas out there in the audience? If you do, shoot them to us. If you watch this later on and you have some questions, just post them below, and we'll make sure that we answer them in the next video, as well as the email that we send out. So remember, if you want to become part of our tribe, go to inspiremassage.com, sign up for our email list, because it's how we help keep all of us on track. And remember, you are one epiphany away from enlightenment. And we're here to help you on that. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And ciao.